We're paying you, aren't we?
The first of the duo is an opinionated local sports editor who has made a name for himself thanks to his beard.
That's a serious beard you got going on. I mean, you're heading toward Doug Dynasty, but well-groomed. That's a good look. If I ever did that, that's the look I would go for.
The other guy is a guy who takes no prisoners when it comes to sports.
Let's stomp these dudes.
Together, they bring you the best in Oklahoma State sports talk and opinions on sports from around the country.
That's right. Listen up. Hey, listen up. You.
It's Jason Elmquist.
Today, I'm a mild-mannered reporter for the newspaper.
And Patrick Wheeler.
I'm a very dangerous man.
This is the Afternoon Sports Drive on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network.
That's what I'm talking about. Sports!
You ain't never heard nothing like this. Let me work, show me where the mic is. I'm on stage, black shirt, and my Timbs. You know how I do it, I ain't playing with you, I've been grinding. Anybody trying to sleep on me, better do something with your eyelids. I hear a lot of whining, but I don't hear a lot of rhyming. Whoa! Everybody got opinions, let it go into my ear, then I block that. Put me on stage, I'ma rock that. Saying you the best, stop that, phony, I am not that. Yeah. What are y'all doing out here? What are y'all doing out here? Maybe you should spend a little less time with the women on your arms and a little bit more with your career. I ain't saying I'm the best, but I should be in the top 10. Give me a list of names, I'ma top them. I'm just playing with you, I don't care what the top is. Leave me at the
Welcome into the Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler here with you on Tuesdays. We keep it rolling. We got a ton of stuff to get into today. Major League Baseball still ramping up. A lot of stories coming out from that. And we're going to start with that topic as Dan Buffa is going to be joining me here to start off the show as well. I've had him on the show before out of 590 The Fan, KMOX News, around in St. Louis there. Dan, I appreciate you coming back on. And hey, how's the feel around St. Louis now that baseball's back?
Oh, it's great. It's back that we're getting any kind of baseball back. I think in this kind of season, you got to take what you can get, appreciate it while it's here. But with everything happening with the pandemic and the COVID, it could be cut off, within like a week. So you almost got to take every game as it could be the last.
Yeah, no, that's the way I think we're operating now. What was your initial reaction when all this is coming out with the Marlins? I mean, it started with the positive test and then them obviously knowing about it and playing all the way to right now where it looks like their games are going to be postponed at least through Sunday.
It just tells you that this is always going to be a lot more difficult if you're not operating in kind of a bubble like the NFL plans to do, like the NHL plans to do. So you're going to have, humans being human and making bad mistakes, and which could affect, the teams that the Marlins were supposed to play, and now they have to find a bunch of players. So it's a fault on the players, but this is going to ultimately come down to Rob Manfred. If let's say this happens again with another team, another player or two just kind of slips up, and you have to make a decision: do we want to push through on this young Frankenstein-ish kind of season, or do we just kind of want to cancel it before it gets too out of hand?
Well, with the Marlins doing this, and we kind of saw the news now, it looks like so far the Phillies aren't really having a lot of positive tests coming out of this, at least at the moment. I know they're getting tested again today. Did you like Major League Baseball's response, which was basically we didn't really consider even canceling the season with this happening?
I think that this is, you almost have to either blindly kind of admire that they're trying to get this in no matter what. And really, one little blowback with the Marlins, I don't think it was ever going to, I don't even think Major League Baseball knew the Marlins existed still. So it's one of those things where they can kind of push this one aside, and I get that. All the other teams are following the rules. This is kind of like the one restaurant that doesn't follow the rules, but all the other restaurants in the area are. So I think they're going to try to keep going, but it comes down to what happens when you got 2 and then 3. When is it acceptable to kind of go ahead and say, okay, maybe this is not worth it? But for the moment, they're leaning into it.
Dan Buffa joining me here on the Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Okay, thoughts after the Cardinals' first series, going 2-1 against Pittsburgh. They looked pretty solid offensively in the first couple of games there at least. And what were your thoughts overall?
I was really impressed by the outfield. The fact that opening day comes around and you have your outfield hitting 7th, 8th, and 9th in the order is never going to give anybody optimism. But then they generate on base percentage, they get runs going, and they score runs, and then they win a couple games. The third game was tough to lose, but, with the Cardinals team that's still trying to find itself offensively, and they're missing some bullpen weapons down there, they're going to run into a game where they're going to have to find a way to just score more runs. They did it on Saturday, but this team is the kind of team that can go from scoring 9 to scoring zip the next day, and that's going to be their kind of Achilles heel the whole season.
Speaking of the outfield, that was one of the things I wanted to ask you, because I've been personally asked multiple times what my thoughts are on when should the Cardinals bring Dylan Carlson up. Is that going to happen this year? And, I try to respond with, I know service time manipulation has a lot to do with it, but also where exactly you're going to put him right now. Do you think we'll see him this season to some point?
I think we have to. I think it really was a service time thing where they didn't want to. They wanted to get those extra 6 days and get the extra year, just so that just kind of, the Cardinals are treating this guy with kid gloves because, this team, and it's not even the team's fault, but it's a bittersweet memory that the last outfield prospect like him was Oscar Tavares.
Yeah.
That ended tragically, and that wasn't the team's fault. I mean, they did everything they could to give that guy the right opportunity. He was a young man. He made a very unfortunate mistake. So I think they're really trying to do whatever they can with Dylan Carlson just to kind of make sure, is this the right time to bring him up? Is the team ready? Is he ready? I think, the kid's ready. I think he was the best hitter in camp. And I think for a team that's struggling offensively, you shouldn't really keep your potentially best offensive weapon down for too long.
Was Harrison Bader being set there on that Sunday game truly because he got hit the day before, or is this a sign of, if he's not going to start hitting really quickly, we got to move on, and with somebody like Lane Thomas, for instance?
I think it's just a sign of, I think you got a lot of guys that need to play, and you have a guy that was having problems with the Mendoza line last year. And so you want to play Bader because he does take away runs on defense, but if he hits too much, he ends up costing a team a few runs on offense. So you have to – I hope Mike Schilt uses the 60-game season to kind of figure out, okay, what does Bader have inside of a competition? What does Lane Thomas have? Can Tyler O'Neill do that for a whole season? So I think he's going to use this quick hook on both the rotation and the outfield and the lineup.
Dan Buffa joining me here on the Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. So with the expanded playoffs basically becoming news like 3 hours before the start of the season, first of all, are you a fan of having 16 teams make the playoffs?
I am not. I just wish they would kind of just, give us some resemblance of the 2019 season. All these changes, it's going to make it look like a brand new game in both good and bad ways. I just wish they would have kept it the same. I mean, it makes it less complicated. It makes it more like the old game that people have come to love. I get when you have to update the game, but I just think this is like, wait a minute, and Major League Baseball didn't want more games, and now they're putting more games in the playoffs. So it's kind of like it's a little, ironic in a way that they wanted to get the lesser games, and now they're adding a bigger extended playoffs structure that could just be very confusing.
So for the Cardinals then, with this expanded playoffs, tell me where you see them finishing. Do they take the division, or do they at least make the playoffs with all these extra teams getting a shot?
See, I think the Cardinals are kind of like the team that has to be knocked off in order to get to the top of the division. I know the Reds loaded up on offense, and the Cubs and the Brewers are just never going to go away. But I just think if the Cardinals can find a way to hit enough, and I think they have the weapons to do that, they just have to get them in the lineup in the form of Dylan Carlson, maybe get, you saw some power from Paul Goldschmidt. Matt Carpenter took some good at-bats. Dexter Fowler can probably hopefully bring something. So I think they're going to hit enough to support their pitching, which I think is their biggest strength. I mean, they lost pitchers this offseason, and they still look great.
How about Waino and Yachty looking like they still have not lost a beat?
Yeah, I mean, I'm beginning to think that, we shouldn't test these two for COVID. We should test these two to see if they're human.
Right.
Because both of these guys are just, they should be rolling down the hill by now, with all due respect to the natural progression of Major League Baseball athletes. You just have a certain window of effectiveness. But Yachty still winning Gold Gloves, still contending, still hitting, and Wainwright just turning into this kind of a different pitcher. He has to rely more on execution and location, that he doesn't really have that fastball anymore, but he's still competing, and I think that's astonishing thing about these two.
Yeah, it was just fantastic to see, classic Yachty gunning a guy down at first base on the pickoff and then throwing one out at second. And Wainwright, man, that curveball still, it's hung up a bit, but there's a lot of times it's still tight as ever. So what are you expecting with this? What are you expecting with this quick Minnesota Twins series starting tonight?
I think this is going to be obviously a big test as far as the team traveling during the pandemic and hoping that they don't have any issues. But again, I think I'm not as familiar with, for some reason, the Twins. I know they're a good club, but it's one of those teams that you just don't really pay enough attention to. So I'm not really ready for this. Okay, they're going to play this division a lot this year. I'm usually ready when they get to them in the middle of the season, but here we are almost August and we're just in the beginning of the season. So I'm a little behind. I know the Twins have a team out there, but it's a good test because, you don't want to face a bunch of Pirates teams where you're just going to hopefully beat them up. So it's good to get a test. It's going to be interesting because the team only plays a certain amount of teams this year. It's just so different. But I'm expecting a stiff test for the Cardinals on their first time on the road because, again, they're going to have to score enough runs.
Yeah, so I don't know about you, but I watched the first couple of games, obviously, on ESPN that Thursday night, and then kind of compared that broadcast to what Fox Sports Midwest did with St. Louis. And I got to say, I think Fox Sports Midwest did a fantastic job with the crowd noise. I mean, all of it seemed really authentic. The broadcast, I thought, was pretty well done. What did you think about for a group of people that have never really had to do anything like this? Did you think that the broadcast overall went off pretty smooth?
I think it did. I think that you weren't reminded too much, except for the completely empty stadium, that it was kind of a different kind of game. The crowd noise wasn't overpowering. You still felt like the players were the stars there leading the action. And it was, of course, you got Dan McLaughlin, who's one of the best in the business. And you pair him with a guy like Brad Thompson, who I think's a lot better than a lot of people really know him for. And you have a really good back and forth, so you have that and you have the game, and so you don't really need any extra noise.
Yeah, no, I think they work about as well as any tandem in the league. Okay, let's switch over to hockey real quick here. Another report coming out that after over 800 players now being tested, still no positive tests of coronavirus. I know that the Blues have an exhibition this week, I think tomorrow, right, with the Blackhawks. So, is there also still that excitement of, we're actually just as close right now to anything as we are to hockey season coming back?
It just seems that it was like years ago when we were talking about Jay Bodmeister and his heart.
You're right.
And now we're just in a different world now. Players are in a bubble. I mean, heck, even the St. Louis reporters like Jim Thomas are being placed in a bubble for 14 days just so they can cover a team. They're not even going to take a shot or stop any pucks. They're just going to write about it. So it's a whole different thing for them. And, NHL, it just tells you that some leagues are doing it right and some leagues are kind of flying by the handle. But, hockey is genuinely trying to finish this season because they have almost a whole season. This is why they are justified in trying to put the best methods forth for safety and get this season in.
Dan Buffa joining me here on the Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Okay, last couple of things here. So are you a fan of the bubble idea? Like, should Major League Baseball have gone ahead and tried to do this and actually make it work instead of what they're doing right now?
I think it was something you had to try that, of course, okay, if it doesn't work out and it's hectic and it doesn't really make too much of a difference, if that was the finding, then you can always go back to, let's go with this method. But the other leagues are rolling with it. And, it's not easy, but nothing in 2020 has been easy. So I think NHL, NFL, the people that are operating in a bubble are really trying to get this season in. They're trying to make 2020 seem a little normal or more normal than it's been. And I just think that was the correct way to at least start.
Okay, so I know you're also a big film TV guy. What are you binging right now?
I just got done finishing Fear City. It's a new documentary on Netflix about the FBI and really just the authorities, the cops taking down the mafia. Back in the 70s, the New York mob pretty much owned the country. So then they couldn't be touched. And this is kind of a story of how the badges kind of come together. They find some new investigative methods and they find a way to kind of really mount a case against them. So that's 3 episodes. I just finished that off. And after this, I'm watching Yellowstone on the Paramount Network. It's a great show with Kevin Costner.
Yeah, I was just actually about to ask if you had started watching that yet.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, I think they're almost more than halfway through a season already, and it feels like there's something big coming. They've been kind of, I don't want to say it, but it's kind of what you always say when a TV show's taking its time. They're kind of spinning their wheels a little bit this season. It's still fun to watch, but I hope that the last 4 hours really pack a punch.
Yeah, no, I'm also really excited. I just finished that latest episode last night, so that was going to be one of my questions. I know you like film and everything. I was like, did he watch Yellowstone, and is he caught up?
Oh, of course.
Oh, man, it's so good. Hey, Dan, I know you got to run. I appreciate you giving me some time here, as always, and, hey, I hope the Cardinals can get it going here tonight, and hopefully we can stick through and have a full Major League Baseball season. Man, stay safe over there in St. Louis. Appreciate it.
All right, thanks a lot, Patrick. Everybody have a nice day.
All right, thank you. That's Dan Buffa. You can follow him on Twitter at Buffa82, Buffa82. Big-time St. Louis Cardinals guy. Obviously, like I said, works with KMOX and 590 The Fan, does a ton. I think he's a film contributor as well, the St. Louis Film Critics, all that stuff. So, yeah, he's got a lot going on. And, you know, I think the best part about kind of what he's talking about there, because when I had him on, let's see, how long ago was that now? It's been a while. But when I had him on the first time, we were talking about the feel around a town like St. Louis, where a Major League Baseball team is like the central of that town, central piece of that town. They have hockey too, which just won a Stanley Cup, but baseball runs it and always has. I think they even did for the most part when the Rams were there. The Rams obviously were a big part of it too, but for a long time it's been St. Louis Cardinals. So the feel around that town when something like that is taken away is just, it's like he described it, it's just not the same. It's really strange. People don't know what to do with themselves. Look, I really just think that when we get these things back, it restores the hope and it restores the, just the feel of normalcy to a lot of people. I'm telling you, when real baseball started up this past weekend, I know people in St. Louis, and it was just like, relief, like washed over them. So it was really good to see that really just have an impact like it does on some places and some towns, some cities, and some people like that. He's kind of right I think, too, when it comes to, he's talking about what I asked him about with the Marlins and Major League Baseball and the response. Like, yeah, they're kind of dealing with this as it comes along, obviously, but at the same time, they're really ready to get through this and willing to do what it takes to get through it. I think that's really true. It reminds me a lot of what's going on with college football. They want to get this thing done and completed all the way through. And they're going to do what it takes to make that happen. Well, Major League Baseball is basically doing the same thing. And it's important to see that response. I think the response from Rob Manfred has actually been a positive one, believe it or not. I mean, we know who Rob Manfred is. This guy has no idea what he's doing most of the time. But I think at this point, he actually said the right things. The response was correct. I'm going to get into this a lot more later on in the show. But it was good to see someone in that power in a situation like this be able to handle it the right way. Because I got to be honest, I think a lot of people, including myself, weren't highly expecting him to make the right call. I didn't expect baseball to just be canceled. I didn't expect the season to just stop. But part of me was like, I really don't know what will happen with a guy like Rob Manfred at the helm because of the decision-making ability that he has, which is not good. Some of the things he's done and said. I mean, look, my problem with Rob Manfred, I already had problems with him, but when the Astros punishment came down and it was like nothing, that was my main, that was it. That was the tipping point. I was like, okay, this guy really had a shot here to punish a team that blatantly cheated. This isn't some did they or did they not. No, it was 100% proven, and yet it was a slap on the wrist. And at that point, I'm just like, okay, the respect is gone. The trust that he's going to make the right decisions when it comes to decisions in Major League Baseball is gone. That was one of my biggest fears when all this hit was we're going to have to go into a pandemic. Baseball is not happening. And the guy at the helm who will ultimately be able to make it happen or not is that guy who made one of the worst decisions of all time in sports, and that was to not punish the Houston Astros. for blatantly cheating, which ultimately ended up in them winning championship. I mean, for anybody that thinks that their cheating didn't lead to them getting that ring, you were completely wrong, because it did. And it should be taken away, shouldn't count, and they should be punished. Teams can get away with whatever, according to Rob Manfred, and not really face the threat of punishment, which is not how it should go at any level. So I appreciate Dan Buffa there coming on, as always. Like I said, I know he's got a ton going on with sports ramping back up, and everybody getting ready for not only St. Louis Cardinals baseball back, but the Blues hockey is right around the corner. The exhibition game tomorrow night against the Chicago Blackhawks. Look, I think that, I don't know how many people like hockey around here. It took me, I'm not going to lie, it took me a few years to really get into it. I'm talking like I'll be honest, I was a postseason hockey guy. I really liked watching postseason hockey. It was fun. Never got a ton into the regular season. But a few years ago, I sat down, started to watch it, and I really got into hockey. It's really entertaining once you sit there and watch it. And I'm just as excited for it to come back than anything, really. Because I think the playoff format's going to be fun. It's all going to be playoff hockey. You know, we got a round-robin tournament about to start up. It's going to be intense. So I can't wait to see that. And it was also interesting for those that are Blues fans. Yeah, Jay Bouwmeester, who he was talking about, it does seem like, just like he said forever ago, when he collapsed on the ice. You know, we're sitting there watching the game really before all this was ramping up in the pandemic. They were still playing hockey, and Jay Bouwmeester with the Blues, he just collapsed. Heart gave out on him. He was revived there by the I'm drawing a blank on where this happened, but there was a visiting team, and they revived him and saved his life. It was crazy. So yeah, that does seem like forever ago with all this going on, but I can't wait. Baseball and hockey basically officially back here. When we come back, the NCAA has announced a new starting date is allowed for college football, for the FBS. What does this mean for Oklahoma State? I'll tell you next.
Well, I'm not trying to get in the way. Minding my own, got nothing to say about nobody. That's right, nobody. Don't shake my tree, don't rattle my cage. You and me will be on the same page. Got no trouble, don't make no trouble. Yeah, you best let a sleeping dog die. 'Cause soon you come to understand why. Hey, you're gonna get bit rabbit.
Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network.
Well, let me tell you how it all went down. Funky little joint on the edge of town called a Pines Pub.
Patrick Wheeler here with you on Tuesday.
Too much.
Keep it rolling here on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network. I was really happy to hear Dan Buffa also say there that, yeah, he is enjoying watching Yellowstone. It's my binge right now as well. I guess it's not really a binge since I'm caught up now, but it was, and I recommend it. If you have not seen it, probably heard about it. Kevin Costner. Definitely worth checking out. That would be my plug for Yellowstone. It is top-tier television. All right, the NCAA today. First, I'll say this. You know, we've seen a lot of Week 0 games, is what we'll call them. That's what they're technically called, Week 0 games in college football being established. And look, I like the idea. I mean, I have actually rooted for this exact thing to happen since the beginning of all this. Everybody else was talking about, you know what, we should push the season back. We might need to put it to the spring. All this. And my initial response was, why not move the season up? Or at least discuss it more. Because I'm sure that plan was talked about, but something tells me it didn't get enough discussion. Something tells me it wasn't talked about as much as moving the season to the spring. Well, here with these Week 0 games now taking place, so many of them already being allowed by the NCAA, they've now passed a blanket waiver that FBS, all football here, can start on August 29th, as early as August 29th. And I mean, it makes sense. If we're trying to get in as many games as possible, then we got to move some dates up. Plain and simple. The exciting part, that is a month from tomorrow. A month. Can everybody out there hold on for one more month with no college football? You can do it. That's all we got left. And here I say this because I expect Oklahoma State, when they first of all find their week 1 opponent, to schedule for August 29th. It would make sense. We're seeing OU do it now with Missouri State. TCU. You go down the list in college football with a bunch of teams that have already scheduled that day anyways and been approved. Well, now everybody's going to get to do it. And it makes sense to me. Really. I think this should have been considered a lot earlier. Now, I know that the counter argument to that is, well, we had to see what happened with players getting back and the testing and all that, and were the protocols being followed, were we getting a ton of positives? I mean, yeah, but at the same time, I feel like all of that also could have been pushed up a little bit. We've taken this as it comes, like we should, but some decisions ultimately have been set on for a little too long. The good news is that with this coming out now, this news of the blanket waiver, that everybody can get ready to start getting back into camps fully that are going to be playing on August 29th, because that date's also going to be changed and moved up. So I would say probably my guess here is soon, fairly soon, we're going to get the word on who Oklahoma State's week 1 opponent is, and to go with that, it will probably take place on the 29th. TV's going to have to move around. I mean, it's going to be different, but that, to me, makes the most sense. And they want a home game. I mean, bottom line, we want a game here in Stillwater. Which, yeah, you obviously want that to still take place. But being able to add in this week 0 just for the sheer hope and opportunity to get in as many games as possible, we're all for that. It's better than sitting there in week 5 or whatever, and we got to postpone or cancel a game because one team has too many positive tests, for instance. So that's, like I said, when we're talking about doomsday scenarios, that's doomsday scenario is getting to a point where you have to cancel a game or stop the season once it's started again. With that being put in place now with the blanket waiver, to have an opportunity to try to avoid that, I mean, it makes sense the NCAA would do it. So I'm expecting fairly soon that we're going to get word on who Oklahoma State is going to play in week 1. Still right now, there's nobody on the board of who that's going to be for sure. It was fun. I'll admit it. It was fun to talk about Alabama while the thought was kind of alive and had a little bit of a spark just to talk about. But Alabama's probably going to play BYU. So that leaves Oklahoma State with fewer options, but obviously still plenty to choose from at this point. Another big plus. News coming out today, the Missouri Valley Conference is not canceling non-conference games. That's important for Oklahoma State, with Western Illinois coming into Stillwater. That's at least one more game you can chalk off that we don't need to find an opponent for. Because the Missouri Valley, I know they had already said all other sports besides football were not doing non-conference. So that's big time to hear from there that the Missouri Valley Conference and FCS conference is going to find a way to still get here to Stillwater. And when you think about it too, that's why we're talking about week 1 with Missouri State and Oklahoma. Maybe OSU does something like what OU's doing. They end up paying for some testing or allowing a lot of different opportunities for the team to get there safely and all that. I think there's different things that'll come through with it, but that game right now is still a go on September 15th. Also announced today in the college football world, Ohio State, one of the most anticipated teams this season. Justin Fields, one of the most highly anticipated success stories coming into this season for Ohio State, has announced that they will allow 20% of their fans into the stadium. Everybody has to wear a mask. Social distancing will be enforced, as well as there will be limited concessions. Look, I think this is the way that it's going to go. This is the template. We had already heard that at some other places, the idea of 20%. I think this is how you're going to have to get used to it. And I would not be surprised to see Oklahoma State follow suit here. I wouldn't be surprised for them to come out and say eventually, all right, 20% of Boone Pickens, you want to get in, you got to wear a mask the whole time, you're going to be social distance, and we're going to have limited concessions. That was one of the questions. It was like, okay, how do you limit people getting up and walking around the concourse altogether, because it's kind of virtually impossible to enforce social distancing up there? Well, they're going to slow down some of the concessions. So I don't really know for sure yet. Like I said, I haven't really been to these games before, so I don't know that there's something special that you get at the games food-wise. At Boone Pickens, I would probably expect it's going to be sort of the bare minimum. Going to cut down on some of that traffic. And look, I got to say this, and I've said this before, but it's ringing truer now. If you want to get into an Oklahoma State game this year, if you even get that opportunity, just be ready to wear your mask. And I think, honestly, that's an interesting topic. It's an interesting idea. Because wearing a mask for 10 minutes at Walmart is one thing, but wearing one for the entire game at Oklahoma State, that's a little different, I would think. I'm not sure how that's going to go down. I'm afraid there's going to be more problems than some people might expect with all this, because there's going to be plenty of people that are going to be like, look, I'm not going to wear a mask. Like, I'll wear it, but I'm not going to wear it when I'm in there. And who's really going to say anything? So it could be a little sketchy, but that's going to be the parameters. I'm just going to tell you right now, probably get ready for that. But all of this is a good sign for the go on college football, bottom line. That's the most important question people want answered. Are we going to do this or not? And as I've preached from the beginning, yes, we are. This is another good sign that Ohio State, first of all, is ready with their fan base, that the Missouri Valley Conference is good to go, that the NCAA says, you know what, we'll actually get off our butts here and announce that everybody's good to go on August 29th if they want to. Because the NCAA hasn't really done anything at all during this whole time. But I gotta say, I'm the guy that'll give credit when it's due. This is a good move, and it was also a good move to cancel the vote, or at least push it, I should say, into August on whether fall championships can happen, and that includes FCS. Because we all know that right there was a power move, right? Everybody gets that. Well, the NCAA could still possibly come out in August and say, you know what, all fall championships, including the FCS, we can't do them. And behind some of that reasoning, they wouldn't admit it, but we can all see it, would be, we're going to get into a battle of optics with the FBS and the college football playoff. Because if we cancel all of our fall championships, how is that going to make the college football playoff committee look to everybody else if they go through with it? The media would have a field day. People would rip them. It'd be right back to these guys are only being played for out there for money. Look, and my argument is this right now, because there are a lot of people that like to come and make the argument that, look, if we can't have fans or whatever, if it's not safe for them, you're telling me that it's safe for those guys to go out there that aren't even getting paid and play football? Look, we got to remember, they don't have to go play football. They have the ability to say, I don't want to play, and on top of that, they can still get their scholarship in full. That's already been decided. No one is forcing any athlete to go out there and play. If there's one at Oklahoma State, if Chuba Hubbard came up and said, I'm not going to play because of the pandemic, then he would be granted that ability to not do that. Anybody could do it. So I don't want to hear this argument that, oh my gosh, they're not even being given the option. They got to go out there and play, and their health is at risk. Like, they know the risk. This isn't a situation where they're being exploited. This is they have that option in their back pocket at any time. Now, do I agree with anyone that would really say I don't feel comfortable playing college football as a student athlete? Unless they have like some severe underlying condition? No, I probably wouldn't agree with it. I probably would argue it and ask them why. But I am going to at least say, okay, I get it because you have the option to do so. I mean, honestly, it makes me think about a guy, and I'm bringing it back home here, Stillwater, but a guy like Chuba or Tylan Wallace, if they were on a team that didn't have a real shot, like I think Oklahoma State actually does, would they consider, you know what, I'm just not going to play. I'm going to prepare as early as I can for the NFL draft. I think it'd be in the back of their minds, but there's also a lot of it where the NFL, a lot of teams are still looking to see what's in the tank this year with some of these guys. They don't want to see draft prospects sitting out an entire season. They would never admit that to the public because it would make them look bad to the public eye, but it's the truth. If stars were to come out and say, I'm not going to play because of the coronavirus, the whispers amongst NFL teams would be like, look, we can't draft this guy where we wanted to. We're not even going to get to see him play this year. Now, some guys' talent will outweigh the rest, and they'll still find a spot, but, I mean, I think that's fair to look at it that way. So bottom line, all this news coming in is just another green light to me that we're going to have college football, absolutely. That was never really a doubt in my mind. I just didn't know how it would play out in terms of will we have the same amount of games. And obviously that's not going to be the case in a couple of conferences. But the Big 12, the SEC, they're doing their part. The ACC so far doing their part and stepping up and making sure they can try to get in, first of all, as many games as possible, but also keep some sort of normalcy in a season where at one point, pretty recently too, looked pretty doom and gloomy. It's coming around the corner, so get ready for it. College football is a month away tomorrow. Feels good to say that. A month away tomorrow. All right, when we come back, I'm going to save the MLB talk for hour number 2. We've already got 6 players from one NFL team that have decided to opt out of the NFL season because of the coronavirus. I'll tell you who they are and why they're doing it next.
I don't wanna wait for our life to be over. It happened, but you take it how you left it. This is give and take. Take your time, take me under. I wanna know, but you show me what I'm missing. In the plane down in Southern California, running in the streets out there. I guess some of us just gotta learn the hard way. Don't give a damn what nobody gotta say. We sell it now. I don't wanna wait.
Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network with Patrick Wheeler.
Over. It happened now, but you take it how you left it. This is give and take. So take your time, take me under. I wanna know, could you show me what I'm missing?
It's Tuesday. Hope everybody's having a great day so far. Thanks for hanging out with me. Tom Dorado will be on tomorrow. Just a heads up, as always, on Wednesday. Love his Where Are They Now segment. He'll be on with me Wednesday and Thursday. Hope you enjoyed the interview with Dan Buffa in hour number, well, I guess we're still in hour number 1, early part of hour number 1. If you missed it, we'll get that up on YouTube and everything, so you can check that out. while I said that too, let me make sure I go ahead and plug that because, look, I've been asked multiple times, and I want to make sure I get this across again. For anyone that missed an interview that we've done on Triple Play Sports Radio, it is on the YouTube page. All you got to do is go to YouTube and search Triple Play Sports Radio. Get them up there almost as soon as they're finished, so you can always find them on there. If you're ever wondering, I missed that. Where is that? Now you know. Okay, so the NFL. The NFL. Come on, we all know that it's going to happen. It's about ready to ramp up. Players and owners have come together. We all know what this is.
This is football. This is a man's sport.
Football. It's a man's sport. So why do we have guys in the league that are choosing to opt out and not play this season? I come on yesterday. I come on and I say, look, I know that Lauren Duvernay-Tardif for the Chiefs opted out, and he was the first one to do so. I also made it clear that I didn't really believe there would be a trend of a lot of players choosing to opt out of the NFL season. Because if they're not high-risk players, high risk with the coronavirus, then they get $150,000. Which, compared to most NFL contracts, that's a pretty big hit. So, there's that at play. The New England Patriots come out with six players opting out from the New England Patriots. Couple of big names, too. Dante Hightower, Patrick Chung, for instance, all in the defense there. There's a lot of different storylines coming out from this. And, look, I'll say this. I think most players in the NFL, just like in college football, if you ask them truthfully, they want to play. I stand by that because I know that football players, the mindset is different than most athletes. I think the toughness is there much more than most athletes. But not even that, it's just the desire to compete at the highest level and to do so successfully. And I think football stands above the rest, football players. And so I don't really think that we're going to see, let me restate what I said yesterday. We're going to see some guys opt out, but I don't think we're going to see really any big names opt out. We saw in Major League Baseball, there wasn't a lot of really big names. There were some guys, but Ryan Zimmerman, yeah. David Price was probably the biggest. But other than that, you didn't really have any superstars that opted out. And I think that's going to be the case with the National Football League as well. The question is, why so many on one team? And why does it have to be the Patriots? Look, when a lot of people hear that, I think they start getting a little suspicious because it's the New England Patriots. It's fair, it's warranted, based on the past of the New England Patriots. I think only 3 or 4 total across the league have opted out, besides those 6 there on the actual team. So that does bring up a little bit of questioning and suspicion. Now, before I get into that, this was pretty good. Something I saw on Twitter. Adam Schefter, NFL insider, your top guy with the NFL, with ESPN, said he was texting with an NFL executive. And the text went, he said, him. Bill is masterminding all of this somehow. Adam Schefter. For what reason? Him. I don't know. That's why he is who he is. So one of the executives tells Adam Schefter, look, that the mastermind Bill Belichick is behind this somehow. And the immediate thought to a lot of people is the tank for Trevor Lawrence situation. Is that what this all is? Let's get all of our players to opt out this year. Most of them won't really miss all that, a lot of money because they've made a lot of money already. Let's get them to opt out. Let's tank. And let's go get our quarterback for the future. I'm trying to kind of find where my angle is because when you look at some of these players, yeah, there's a couple that have, battled some illnesses. I have to believe maybe 1 or 2 are legitimately worried about the effects of the coronavirus if they were to get it, for instance. But do I really believe that all 6 are purely not playing because they're afraid of what will happen if they get the coronavirus? No, I don't think I am. Would I be surprised in 20 years to hear somewhere down the line in a Bill Belichick documentary that he had this master plan to use this pandemic and this opt-out to his advantage? No. Honestly, I wouldn't. But the question comes, and it all circles back to Cam Newton. It all circles back to Cam Newton. If Cam wasn't signed, and it was still a Jared Stidham New England Patriots team, then I think this conspiracy has a little bit more weight to it. Because nobody really bought in that Jared Stidham was going to be the guy. I never did. So they get Cam Newton now, and you're like, but that doesn't really make sense. Maybe, just maybe, they're throwing Cam Newton out there for this 1 year. They're not even paying him. They throw him out there, and they say, if something good happens, then it happens. If it doesn't, maybe we finish low enough to get a nice young quarterback and make in the future. Or at least one that can battle Jared Stidham. Or maybe we don't even give Jared Stidham a chance and we send him out. Maybe we trade up and try to pick early. I mean, there's a lot of things to take from it because I just don't, but I'm not the only one. I just don't buy that 6 Patriots players are simply opting out because of the fear of the coronavirus. I really don't. But it does raise a couple of red flags. I mean, I feel like when they got Cam Newton, they signed him for dirt cheap, that they saw this opportunity to all of a sudden not be the Patriots team that everybody else thought they were going to be. You know, because before they signed Cam Newton, look, the Bills were smiling from ear to ear. The Jets never really had a shot. The Dolphins, with a rookie quarterback, who knows what could happen. So that division was definitely open, I think. I always said, and I'll still stick to it, I said from the beginning, even with no Tom Brady, the Patriots would finish first in that division. They'd still find a way because Bill Belichick's Bill Belichick. Well, in this case, it just makes me question what the ploy here is. But if anything, I still think the winner is Cam Newton. Okay, because if you end up losing a lot of your defensive guys, which it looks like you're going to, then Cam Newton has an even better shot to show how much he has left on the offensive side. I mean, if the Patriots can't stop anybody, and you start getting into some shootouts almost every game, then it's a prime opportunity for Cam Newton to be like, I can win a shootout myself. Or I still have the ability to be an offensive superstar in this league. He's still the winner to me out of all this. And I don't want to hear that's going to be this battle in the offseason. Jared Stidham might still have a start at the job at the starting position. You don't know. He might still have a chance. No, he doesn't. It's Cam Newton's job. It was the minute that he signed. Jared Stidham will make a fine backup. But sorry, he's not your starter. So I think Cam wins out here. Now, a lot of it probably has to do with, we don't know exactly how healthy Cam is. He says he's healthy. His workouts make him look like he's as healthy as ever. But we also know he's injury prone in the recent times he's been in the NFL. So you know the Patriots, when they signed him, and now that all this is going down, they also think, who's to even say that Cam Newton finishes the season? Because guess what? If you ask Bill Belichick or Robert Kraft if they ended up tanking this year, would it be the worst thing in the world? No, it actually wouldn't. With Tom Brady gone and not a ton of offensive weapons, it really wouldn't be that bad to have a shot in the draft to get another quarterback or some more threats on offense. because I love to harp on it because I still believe that Cam Newton is extremely talented. I still think Julian Edelman's about as solid a receiver in the slot that you can get in the NFL, but let's be honest, there's a lot of age on this team. They got some young guys, but they haven't really proven themselves yet. The running back spot is still a question. You know, Tom Brady was the soul of this team easily. Both sides of the ball. Now, defense was really good when Tom Brady was around, but you're crazy if you don't think that he was a big part of that. He made them also be pretty good. I would think that this defense would want to play with and for Cam Newton. So there's a lot of questions. I mean, is the conspiracy theory's dream here? Conspiracy theorist's dream where this is the tank for Trevor situation? Let's get everybody to opt out and have no chance of winning anything this year, and let's go get him. I mean, I think there's certainly an argument to be made that it's possible. It's not really the Patriots' forte, but look, what do they have to lose? They're the Patriots. They've won everything that you can win multiple times. It's an interesting storyline to follow. Again, I don't think that many NFL players are going to opt out. There already are some, but I don't think it's going to be this huge number, and I certainly don't think we're going to see a lot of big-name players opt out. They're just not going to take that chance when it looks like football is going to be a full go. All right, when we come back in hour number 2, Major League Baseball, the Marlins story continues to develop. Even into today, just before we get on the show today, I'll talk about all that. Because guess what? Baseball's still going on. But what does this mean for the Miami Marlins? Where are they going to sit with everything going on in Major League Baseball that they've caused? I'll tell you in hour number 2. That's next.
It's been a too long time with no peace of mind. I'm ready for the times to get better. I've got to tell you, I've been racking my brain, hoping to find a way out. I've had enough of this continual rain. Changes are coming, no doubt. It's been a too long time with no peace of mind. And I'm ready for the times to get better.
It's hour number 2 of the afternoon sports drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network.
You seem to want from me what I cannot give.
You can find us in multiple ways.
I feel so lonesome.
On the dial, 1020 AM, 1580 AM. 93.1 FM, 93.3 FM, 105.1 FM, Triple Play Sports Radio app, and streaming online at tripleplaysportsradio.com.
It's been a too long time, no peace of mind, and I'm ready for
all right. Major League Baseball has been the talk of the town with everything going on with the Miami Marlins. We all know what happened yesterday and the day before that with news about the Miami Marlins having players testing positive. It sent this crazy shockwave throughout sports. People everywhere jumped on the train of, oh my goodness, we can't have sports, we gotta stop. Like, look, no, we don't. There was never this scare of we need to cancel the season or postpone it. None of that. You know why? Because Major League Baseball had plans in place. Protocols are in place to handle this type of situation. So what's the outcome of it right now? Well, the Phillies-Yanks game postponed again. The Miami Marlins, all their games will be postponed through Sunday. But here's the good news, and don't know about anybody else, but you actually had to go through and find it again because it's positive news. No positive tests coming from the Philadelphia Phillies. As I said yesterday, that would be the key. That's who we all needed to watch out for, was the Phillies. the team that played the Marlins, if they came down with a bunch of positive tests, then we were in trouble. Because then everyone's going to be like, you know what, it's spread. This is, really something that we can't do if we're going to have it spreading amongst different players on different teams. That could shut down the league. Like, that would have been an issue. But guess what? Nothing. So much so that 6,400 tests have been given out through Major League Baseball since Friday. 0 positives, including the Phillies. The only positives out of those since the Friday coming from the Marlins. 6,400 other ones that were negative. The only other positives coming from the Marlins, who the number is now up to 17. Look, this just exemplifies 100% what it means to be a poorly run organization. We all know really bad sports organizations, sports franchises. The NFL, it's the Browns. It's the Giants, it's the Redskins, it's the Jets. Major League Baseball, it's the Orioles, it's the Royals, it's the Marlins. I mean, the Marlins are just a bad organization. They have been for a while. Like, the talent isn't good. The front office management still hasn't been good since Derek Jeter took over. And it's clear that these players just aren't taking it serious. Now, look, I'm not the guy that would ever come on and just harp on a guy for living his life during all this. Because I get it. With what we know now from the virus, I'm never going to shame anybody for going out and living their life. But at the same time, like I said yesterday, the responsibility of being a Major League Baseball player amongst a bunch of your peers during a pandemic is pretty heavy. And not being able to handle it, it's not a coincidence that all of this happened on one of the worst teams in baseball. One of the worst run organizations in baseball. It's not a coincidence at all. We see this all the time. I think, to me, when I think of other organizations, like I said, the Browns are a perfect example. It's not just the product being very, very bad on the field. It's off the field issues or coaching issues or issues amongst the team that they can't handle being around each other. All of that. And it's a sign of an unprofessional organization. It's just not run well. Look, so I don't know. I don't know what went down amongst players and ownership with the Marlins. I'm assuming it was probably like everybody else's. They probably said, look, we don't want you to really be doing this. You got to, a lot of this is on you. We need you to be responsible here and not put yourself in a situation to risk it. But something tells me with other teams, since we're seeing 0 negatives from everybody else, that other teams actually heeded that advice and are taking it serious. I mean, there's no way to squirm out of this if you're the Marlins now. Marlins PR and Marlins front office was ready and probably a little hopeful there'd be a few more positives amongst the league so they didn't look like the redheaded stepchild here. But there's no way to get around it now if you're the Miami Marlins. It was probably just a little, you know what, please don't do this, but we're not going to, go crazy if you do. Well, this is what happens when you got guys that don't care. Bottom line. Because guess what? This obviously wasn't something that was spreading around in Philadelphia in the dugouts or anything like that. This wasn't something that was gathered from other players or contracted from other players. This was Miami Marlins going to play the Philadelphia Phillies, not being in a bubble here, so they get to go back to their hotel or wherever they're staying, and then they're probably just not watched from there. It's an honor system. And the argument is, I've said it, I get it, because these are grown men. They should have the ability to make decisions with their life for themselves. But you also, as a grown man, take the responsibility of your decisions into everything that you do, right? Like, you count that in when you're doing something. As, oh, this could actually result in this, so maybe I don't do it. Because, look, I think the Marlins were playing with fire here. Bottom line, that's what they were doing. You know, they might have been out there having a good time doing whatever they were, where they got the coronavirus, but they were this close to forcing Major League Baseball to do something drastic. Because I'm telling you all, if the Philadelphia Phillies had come back with a ton of positive tests, that might have been it. We might have gotten a weekend of baseball in and would have had to stop. If we didn't cancel, at least like postpone, but then what would you do with all those games? Honestly, my solution right now, since we know that this is solely a Miami Marlins problem, why not just punish them? Like, we're postponing these games through Sunday. Those should all count as losses. It's not the other team's fault that they don't get to play them. Why should we not count those as losses? I mean, I'm for it. That would teach them a lesson, I would hope, right? We can bring in the idea, like I said yesterday, let's throw some double headers at the end of the season so we can get their games in, but they don't deserve to play. Now, I know not every player on there deserves to be punished, but hey, it's a team thing. You're taught that from Little League on. You know, your team's actions reflect on you as well. So, honestly, like, I like that solution. And I got to say this too. I like Major League Baseball's response. Their response to this was good. I said I'd talk about it here earlier in hour number 1. Because this was an opportunity that a lot of people who like to watch sports fail for some reason, they are rooting for this opportunity to see Major League Baseball have to make a drastic choice. But look, they didn't. Major League Baseball stood their ground. They said, you know what? Just because one team has some positive tests doesn't mean we got to shut this down. And you know why Major League Baseball is saying that? And why the Big 12 and the SEC has kind of said that already? Because they realize where we are with this. This isn't the beginning of this pandemic. We are now in almost August with this. It makes no sense to make rash decisions anymore. That's why I went off on the Big 10 and Pac-12, because of what they did. Because this isn't February or March or even April anymore. It's the beginning of August, and we know how to deal with this thing at the same time, live our lives, and that means getting sports back. We're seeing it. Remember what happened with Major League Soccer? Look, I don't really pay attention to Major League Soccer, but I wanted to see how it would get them going when they got back in the bubble in Florida. Remember, they had a couple teams they had to pull out, right? I think it was the Dallas Football Club that had players testing positive. They had to pull them out, and they still went on with their season, their tournament thing. Like, we're seeing that it's being proven that this is 100% doable, and Major League Baseball is also proving that right now. Because when they started this back up, Major League Baseball did not plan to just halt it and cancel the season. I think it would take a lot for that to be the case. I'm talking like multiple teams coming down with tons of cases. Look, and that's just not the case amongst sports really anymore. We're seeing it in hockey, 0 positives. We're seeing it in Major League Baseball, 0 positives except for the incompetent Miami Marlins. We're seeing it in the NBA, no positives in the bubble. We're seeing it amongst college football teams all over the country. No positives or very few positives at a lot of schools. Like, guys get it. They understand what's at stake. And they're willing to sacrifice a little bit of what they would consider their part of their normal life to make sure they get the opportunity to do what they love. I mean, I think we could all respect that. That's why I think it fires a lot of people up like me when you get guys like the Marlins that are just throwing caution to the wind saying, well, who cares? If I go out here and do this, who cares? I mean, no one's gonna find out. Like, dude, they test you all the time, man. They test you all the time. You're gonna find out if you have the coronavirus. Now, I know there's plenty of people who say this is what happens when you don't put them in a bubble. This is what happens. But look, we don't know for sure that bubbles are foolproof. I mean, right now they seem to be working, and hopefully that's still the case. But we're also seeing pretty much everybody else make it work in Major League Baseball except for a select group of guys that happen to be on the same losing organization. Looking back to this, why not, like I said, punish the Marlins, hand them these losses for these games they can't play? It's not like they were going to be fighting for a spot at the end of the season anyways. I mean, let's be real. I know we've talked a lot about how this is an open year, only 60 games, and who knows what could happen. We know what would happen with the Miami Marlins. There's a lot of teams we can look at and say we know what's going to happen. It's just like the ones I said earlier in Major League Baseball. You know, we can probably say we know what's going to happen on the good side, at least winning-wise, for the Yankees, for the Astros probably, for the Rays maybe. I mean, you get all those right there. And for the Dodgers, you go down the list. Now, for the bad, we all know what's going to happen. We just do. With the Orioles, with the Marlins, with the Royals, with the Tigers. They're just bad ball clubs. They're not going to compete. So, yeah, I like my decision. I mean, my solution. I like it. I think the Miami Marlins should be punished for this. This isn't just let's postpone them, give them a fair chance. No, they willingly and knowingly put themselves in this situation. So why should they be rewarded with an opportunity to still compete? They shouldn't. And I'll say this again. Look, am I a little shocked at what Major League Baseball ultimately came up with? Yeah. With their decision, I kind of am. I mean, part of it, I never really thought they'd cancel it, but I halfway expected Rob Manfred to just say something or do something really dumb. Because that's just what he does and who he is. But he actually made the right decision here. And that will always, like I said, by me, be celebrated when you do the right thing and say the right thing. And that's what they did. Let's just scrap the Miami Marlins altogether. Let's kick them out of the league for this year. Tell them that you had your shot. Go away. You know what else that would do? Let's say they followed my advice and they gave the losses to the Marlins on these games. You know what else that would do? That would tell a lot of other teams, don't do this. If you put yourself in a situation where you're going to get the coronavirus, and a lot of you get it, then guess what? We're going to punish you for it. I think it would be a huge statement. Now, you can't really do that now because of Rob Manfred's lack of doing that when it actually for sure needed to be done, like I said with the Astros. There was a time where he really, really, really needed to punish the Astros. Like, they needed to lose the World Series ring that they won by cheating. So when he didn't do that, he's certainly not going to do what I'm saying, but I think it would make a big statement to everybody else. I'm also curious because, like I talked about yesterday with the NFL, there's now part of it where players, or teams, I should say, don't have to pay players that are found to have put themselves in high-risk situations. Those are defined as 15 or more people in a club, in a house party, etc., around guys. I want that to be a part of Major League Baseball right now. Go find out what these guys, the Marlins, were doing. If they in fact were, which it seems like they probably were, putting themselves in high-risk situations, don't pay those guys. Don't pay them. Yeah, this is a big, big L for the Miami Marlins. Like, the PR department is scrambling right now. Derek Jeter can't say anything to fix this from a front office standpoint. Like, this is just bad. If you're a Marlins fan, I'm sorry. But bottom line is this: bad franchises are going to do these types of things. Like, it just coincides. Just like you can say at any given year with the NFL, hey, the Cleveland Browns will probably do something stupid just because they're poorly run. You can go down a list of college teams, too, around here that have had issues, and you look at them, they're just not successful. That's from the top to the bottom. When an organization or a team is poorly run, doesn't matter what kind of talent you bring in, because, again, it goes back to the Browns. On paper, they have a really talented team. But it doesn't matter what kind of talent you bring in. When you're poorly run from the top, it trickles down all the way from coaching to players to staff to you name it, to fans. And that's the case here with Miami Marlins. Poorly run organizations, poorly coached organizations are going to do things like this, even in unprecedented times like we're living in now. So it's not a good look for the Marlins, as if they needed any more bad PR. They got something. All right, when we come back, one quarterback now owns a baseball team. I'll tell you who next.
Levitating off the blacktop. Used to struggle getting started, now I can't stop. Used to be the quiet kid in the sandbox, now it's hands up every time that your man rocks. They ought to stop me coming in again. You mad? You thought we were synonyms? Too bad, that's the water you're getting in. You're too fat for the sharks that you're swimming in. From where I'm sitting, contenders are looking like fruit spinning around in the blender. Hardly a snack when I'm here looking for dinner. I eat them, delete them, they're barely beginners.
Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network.
Put a chain around everything I came for. Look, but don't judge, sucker, tell them take an IOU. Say they want respect now, thinking they deserve to have it next now. Tell them take an IOU. Believing what they're making up, talking loud but never really.
Patrick Wheeler with you on Tuesday.
I've been drawing plans out and
hey, in case you missed it, I think the Eddie film aired yesterday again for the second time on ESPN. I believe it has one more showing, but it's also available to stream at any time. And it's pretty fantastic because I still am seeing responses from first-time viewers that didn't get to see it the first time, and they're watching it now, and they're like, wow, it's just the same reaction. And then people that have watched it again that are just like, man, it's one of those films that you want to watch multiple times because you probably can catch something or something, hits a little harder than it did the first time. But it's definitely one of those you want to go back and check out more than once. I mean, that is that is just a fantastic documentary covering Eddie Sutton's life. And there's still good news, I know, to come from Chris Hunn, director of the film, about where that film's going to end up distribution-wise. I'm going to guess it's probably going to find its way to Netflix. I mean, I think it was such a big hit on ESPN that it's probably going to be able to stream on Netflix at some point. So everybody, literally everybody, can see it. And I'm really excited for Chris and then obviously the Sutton family, but everybody that put work into that film, because getting it in at a spot like ESPN during the time too where there was also no sports going on, so there were even more eyes, probably the occasional set of eyes that probably maybe wouldn't have watched it the first time if there was a game going on or something like that, but found themselves watching it. There wasn't a huge Oklahoma State fan or Arkansas or whatever. So that was a big part of it. But there were plenty of people, too, that would have watched that no matter what. And I'm telling you, I've seen a lot of sports documentaries in my life. That's at the top. It's just, you can tell how much work was put into it. And I really love when independent films get the credit they're deserved, because this one deserves all the credit and the awards that will come its way. And I can't wait to see where it lands. So definitely go check that out on ESPN. Again, if you haven't seen it yet for some reason, go do it. It's worth your time, I promise. All right, so what do you do when you're an NFL quarterback and you're going to get $500 million? Well, duh, the obvious answer, you buy a ownership of a baseball team. I mean, seriously, did I have to spell that out for you? No, it's Patrick Mahomes, Kansas City Chiefs, announced today that he is part owner of the Kansas City Royals. He's the youngest owner in sports history, 24 years old. Look, I think this guy's ahead of his time. I mean, it was clear that that was the truth on the field, but making as much money as he's going to make and doing something like this too, like this is big move. This is big move number one. Now, I will say this, hopefully for you Kansas City Royals fans, some of his winning rubs off on the Royals because they need it. It is kind of interesting. I thought to myself, you know what? I wonder how it would feel to be a fan of the best team in football and arguably the worst team in baseball. That's got to be a weird feeling. There were times where that was the case for people in St. Louis as well, so don't get me wrong, with the Rams and the Cardinals. But that is kind of interesting that it happens to be in the same town. I think what this is a huge, huge PR move as well for Patrick Mahomes. I say that because this is just showing even more how much this guy loves Kansas City, loves the town that he's going to be a part of for the foreseeable future as the best quarterback in the league. You know, this shows even with a franchise that's, like I said, not very good, one of those, in my opinion, is pretty poorly run, but it just shows his love for the team and for the city. You know, if you're going to do what Patrick Mahomes does and you're going to sign a long-term deal worth a ton of money, doesn't it also make sense to invest even more into that city? Because to a lot of people, I'm telling you, I already know, I'm already seeing it, but people around Kansas City, it's like, this guy really does care about this town. And I was obviously the same way with all the charities he does and the events he does and everything too, but this kind of puts an empirical period at the end. It's like, this is my city, and I'm here for the long haul. When you can wrap up a guy, lock him up at such a young age, it just doesn't happen that often, especially with the talent that's there. But what also doesn't really occur that often is a guy willing to invest in his city at that age, because that's what he's doing. It's great. I think it's great to see for the city of Kansas City. And look, I mean, it's just the best way to go with a guy that literally will have more money than a lot of us will ever even dream of. You know, let's kind of put my money into a spot that I think will grow eventually, which he does think the Royals will get there at some point. They have been there. I'm not saying that they've been this awful franchise all the time. We know they're past success, but for the last number of years now, it's kind of gone back to the old Royals ways. And I like to harp on the Royals, okay? That's what Cardinals fans do. A lot of people like to think, oh my gosh, they're in Missouri. You should be rooting for your team if you can't root for the Cardinals. No, that's not the case for me. Royals are like top rival next to the Chicago Cubs, so I'm not really going to root for them. I just love seeing that the investment is there. And the investment in a city by a guy at that age is there, and it's really cool to see. Pat Mahomes, honestly, in my opinion, could he go down as the most loved athlete of all time? I mean, seriously. Name an athlete that everybody seems to like just gravitate towards, doesn't really have an issue with. You're going to get your naysayers and your haters always that will find something. But for the majority of other athletes, sports media, everybody. Like, I think Patrick Mahomes could go down as the most loved athlete pretty much of all time before it's all said and done. It's pretty cool to see. Happy for him in the great city of Kansas City. Speaking of former Chief player here, this is absolutely incredible. This is absolutely incredible news. Alex Smith, former Chiefs player, now with the Washington football team, that sounds weird to say, formerly known as the Redskins, is officially been cleared for full football workouts. everybody knows Alex Smith, what happened to him. And if you don't, I encourage you to go watch that 60 for that E60. It's on ESPN still, I believe, to stream. Alex Smith breaks his leg. Seemed like it was going to be a normal surgery, get it back together. Then it turned wrong, ultimately resulted in 17 surgeries. And it was so bad at one point with the infection in his leg that they thought he might not make it. I mean, he could have died from this thing. And here he is now officially cleared for football workouts. Look, and I'm warning you, if you haven't seen the pictures of Alex Smith's leg when it is healing, but also when it was broken, you better think twice before looking if you're a queasy person or stomach is easily upset by things. It is one of the most gruesome sports injuries I've ever seen in my life. Might be the worst I've actually ever seen in my life. And look, I had my issues just like every Chiefs fan did with Alex Smith, but in the long haul, he did a lot of good things for Kansas City. I think a lot of it was there wasn't a lot of confidence in him by the team to allow him to use his full ability at quarterback. But do I also think he's somewhat limited at quarterback? Yeah, even before the injury, there were some limits. He wasn't really comfortable still making some big throws. But again, I'm not really sure how open that playbook was to him with the weapons he still had. Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce were still a part of that arsenal, and it wasn't really utilized as much when he was there. But I've been rooting for him this entire time. I would root for him when he went to Washington, and I never thought for 1 second that he would ever be able to get back on a football field again. We've seen people come back from breaking bones in sports. Like, that's not abnormal. But it is when a guy went through 17 surgeries. So much so that the advice given to him by the doctor was amputee. Let's amputate that leg and make you an amputee here. It's probably the best way to go, because we can't guarantee that you'll live through this surgery. Like, the sheer fight and will of a guy like Alex Smith, you don't find that in anybody else. And it goes back to my point of that's what football players are. Like, football players are just different. They're bred different. They're taught to experience pain and overcome challenges in a different way. And if you're lucky enough to be taught that at a young age by the right people, you can be a really good player. And you can overcome a lot of things in life. And I think that's the case with Alex Smith. Now, his toughness might be an outlier a little bit. I don't know how many guys would, A, make it through what he did, but also, B, get back to possibly playing football. Now, look, I don't know if he ever actually sees the field again. Does he actually have a chance to beat out Dwayne Haskins this year? We know that there was some uncertainty regarding Dwayne Haskins. You know, Ron Rivera was not really that committal when asked about him the other day. Does he have an actual shot? I just don't see how an NFL team, Washington or otherwise, gives Alex Smith a chance just on good conscience. Because if one thing were to happen to that leg again, I mean, I couldn't imagine the outcome of that. And I just also can't imagine Alex Smith wanting to get back and go out there. Like, it's one thing to me to want to prove yourself again and say, I still have what it takes. Everybody wants to do that. But coming back from an injury so extreme that you literally almost lost your life, and you still want to go back out there and give it a shot, that to me is where it would probably cut off. No matter how much I love the sport, like, I want to play again. I want to prove that I can do it again. But at the same time, I still got a life to live, family to support. Alex Smith has a family to support. Like, I would be making that priority number one. Maybe he becomes the next Chase Daniel and he's backing up and never really goes into a game, or he's third string and he bounces around the league, makes a little bit of money to sit on the sideline. Now, I've already been proved wrong with him actually getting to this point and cleared for football activity. So maybe he defies all the odds. I just don't know how a team is going to willingly say, yeah, let's give him a shot. Because what if something happened? We all know how dangerous it is for quarterbacks. I know you're not allowed to hit quarterbacks as much anymore. But when something like what happens to Alex Smith does happen, you take that chance, your leg gets caught up underneath you. What happens if he breaks it again? I know that that's the wrong way to think, but it's something this extreme. I fear for him getting out there on the football field. And I think most teams probably feel the same way. Maybe Washington throws him out there. They see what he has in his arm. They see if he's able to protect himself and not, allow big hits if he can avoid them. Can he scramble at all? Can he step up in the pocket with confidence? Can he throw off his back leg? All of that has to be looked at. And if he checks the boxes off for Washington, do they at some point go, we got to give this guy a shot if Dwayne Haskins can't do it? Because Dwayne Haskins has yet to prove himself. And the Washington football team is in a really weird and awkward spot right now with the name change, with the legal issues going on, with Dan Snyder being Dan Snyder. There's a lot of things going on that are really awkward in the Washington football team. Does Alex Smith fix everything? You got Chase Young coming in, who has a chance to reset that defense. Does he make that mix go around and make it work? I would think the only way Washington would actually let him get back out on the field with defenders coming at him would be if Dwayne Haskins just implodes early on. Maybe you designate him as the backup, but if Dwayne Haskins starts the season a couple of games and just looks awful and can't get it done, you maybe take that chance. But if I'm the head coach or the owner, I'm like, dude, I just can't put you out there on my good conscience. Like maybe another team will or another coach, but I can't, knowing the risk. Now, that's the whole knowing the risk. I don't personally know what would be the outcome if something bad happened to his leg again, but just off pretty common sense and how bad it was, I'm assuming it would possibly be life-threatening. I mean, that thing was awful. They compared it in the E60 to a guy getting his leg blown off by a roadside bomb. A guy getting his leg blown off by a roadside bomb is what was compared to what happened to Alex Smith on a football field. That's nuts. That is an injury unlike any of us have ever seen in sports. And I just think, bottom line, to wrap up this story, it really shows the true testament of a guy like Alex Smith who can literally overcome anything. That is crazy. That is crazy that he's even having the shot to get back to where he is. I think he's one of the toughest guys in the world. And it's really impressive to see him even be in a position to possibly get back out there on a football field. When I come back to round out the show, we're getting ready for all sports to come back. That's inevitable at this point. But also, one NFL receiver went so far to prove that he's better than everyone that he had to go on Twitter and actually call other receivers out. Who was it? And was he correct? I'll tell you next. Back, Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Patrick Wheeler here, rounding out the show. Had a lot of good stuff talked about today. Hey, I want to also mention, yesterday I went off and I talked about the Lou Williams NBA story where he decided to make that quick pit stop in Magic City Strip Club on the way back to the bubble. So he claimed that he had to get some of those world-famous chicken wings, apparently, that are there at the strip club. Look, I saw the picture of the chicken wings, an actual picture from Magic City. Look, these things look phenomenal. Like, maybe he was actually telling the truth a little bit. Like, I have to think that other things that were there besides the wings played a factor in him visiting, but those things are like, they look like next level, okay? You can say that when you see a picture of wings that look good, like, no, you haven't seen Magic City's wings. You got to check these out. They kind of changed my mind immediately. Like, okay, Lou, all right, getting a little bit more leeway from me. Maybe you actually did stop to get some of those wings. But was it worth it? Really, was it? Is it going to be worth $100,000 missing 2 games? But the picture is wow. They just look phenomenal. So maybe there's a little truth to him saying, I had to get some of those wings, okay? Just couldn't help it. Just happened to be at a strip club. Oh, man. Lou Williams never change. All right, one NFL receiver decided that, you know what? They give me a ranking on Madden, and it's just not fair. My video game ranking enrages me, and I've had enough of it. Keenan Allen with the Los Angeles Chargers had enough of being disrespected by the Madden team. He gets on Twitter and says he's tired of being silent. Actually tags and calls out Tyreek Hill, Mike Evans, and Chris Godwin, who he incorrectly called Chris Goodwin and tagged some random no name with like 10 followers on Twitter named Chris Goodwin. And said, I don't care what they say, I'm better than all 3 of you guys. Chris Godwin comes back and is like, dude, that's not me. Mike Evans is like, you're not on my level, was his response. So Keenan Allen then doubles down and says, not only am I better than you 3, I'm the best receiver in the entire AFC West. He says he's the best receiver in the entire AFC West with Tyreek Hill in the AFC West. Like, Keenan Allen is completely out of his bag right now. So let me first say, let's see, what order would I put it in, the ones he said he's better than? He's not even second best on that list. Tyreek Hill is number 1 on that list. Mike Evans second. Keenan Allen would be third, barely above Chris Godwin. And I only say that because Chris Godwin had such a good year last year, but that was just the first year he's really exploded. So he decides to sound off on Twitter. Look, I think a part of it is he's just frustrated. The Chargers happen to be in the same division with the team that has really no reason to not make it back to the Super Bowl for multiple years, on paper at least, in a pretty weak division. I think he's also frustrated because the Los Angeles Chargers have a lot of talent on that team, but they somehow can't get it all together. And I'm saying both sides of the ball. Like, they have a lot of talent. Now there's a huge question at quarterback. Who's it going to be? We can't get a fan base here anyways. They're missing that aspect of it. Oh, and to make things worse, we're in the same division with the Kansas City Chiefs. And might just be the third best team in the division this year. The Broncos might actually be better than us this year. I think all of that plays into him being frustrated. Now look, I do understand, because there's a lot of times when people go down best wide receivers in the NFL, they go down the list and they leave Keenan Allen off. He probably deserves to be on there ahead of some guys, because I think he is extremely talented. I think he's about as reliable as any receiver. But to say that he's better than Mike Evans and personally call out Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and Tyreek Hill, I think it was just a case of boiling over a little bit there. Let's hold our emotions back a little bit if we're Keenan Allen. Look, Tyreek Hill, like, he makes the argument for best receiver in the league. I mean, there are plenty of guys in sports media that put him at number 1 in the league. And I understand it. He's 100%, by and large, the most talented receiver in the AFC West. Probably the AFC in general. So, Keenan Allen, like, dude, what are you doing? But, you know what this told me? This told me, you know what? We are actually really close to getting football back. Nothing says football is back like a player hopping on Twitter and starting beef with his other former, or I should say teammates, or not teammates, league mates, other guys around the league in the same position. That tells me the NFL is right around the corner. It made it feel normal. Nothing like a good old wide receiver back and forth. Change up the pace a little bit on social media. Because as we all know, who are the drama queens in football at every level, at every position? Wide receivers and defensive backs. And Keenan Allen is no different, especially in the NFL. They're always the most vocal. They're always the most dramatic. You always got to make everything about them. Well, here's another case of it. Just to make it clear, when I'm talking about Tyreek, I never said he's the number 1 receiver in the NFL, but I get the argument for it. He's probably my 3rd best receiver in the NFL. I think Michael Thomas is the clear-cut number 1. Julio Jones is probably the clear-cut number 2. You could switch him out with DeAndre Hopkins, I wouldn't be mad. And I would put Tyreek at number 3. So there you have it. Keenan Allen, does he crack my top 10? Yeah, honestly, he's probably in there at 9 or 10. So yeah, put some respect on his name, but until he learns who to tag on Twitter, I'm not really gonna say he deserves all of it. This has been the Afternoon Sports Drive, Triple Play Sports Radio Network. Thanks for hanging out with me, Patrick Wheeler, here on Tuesday. Tom Dorado joins me tomorrow. He'll have his guest on Where Are They Now at 4:30 tomorrow, so make sure you stay tuned for that. Appreciate Dan Buffa coming on the show in hour number 1 with me. St. Louis Cardinals start a series tonight at Minnesota against the Twins. For anyone wondering who they play. And who do the Royals play? I like to try to mention, like I said, I think my fan base around here probably for MLB is probably Cardinals, Royals, maybe Rangers. So the Royals play the Tigers. Oh, that's an ugly series. It's 6:10. 6:10 tonight. Cardinals' first pitch is sitting at 7:10. There you go. Baseball tonight. Enjoy it. Thanks for hanging out with me. This has been the Afternoon Sports Drive with Patrick Wheeler. Have a great rest of your Tuesdays. We'll see you back here tomorrow on the Triple Play Sports Radio Network.